Bob Marley and the Wailers, previously known as the Wailers and prior to that the Wailing Rude Boys, the Wailing Wailers and the Teenagers, were a Jamaican ska, rocksteady, and reggae band. The founding members in 1963 were Bob Marley, Robert Nesta Marley, Peter Tosh, Winston Hubert McIntosh, and Bunny Wailer, Neville Livingston. During 1970 and 1971, Wailer, Marley, and Tosh worked with renowned reggae producers Leslie Kong and Lee Scratch Perry. Before signing to Island Records in 1972, the band released 4 albums. 2 additional albums were produced before Tosh and Wailer departed from the band in 1974, citing dissatisfaction with their treatment by the label and ideological disagreements. Marley continued with a new lineup, which included the I3s, and went on to release 7 more albums. Marley died from cancer in 1981, at which point the group disbanded. The Wailers were a groundbreaking ska and reggae group, noted for songs such as Simmer Down, Trench Down Rock, Nice Time, War, Stir It Up, and Get Up, Stand Up. History. Early years. The band formed in 1963 following self-taught musician Peter Tosh, 1944 to 1987, meeting the singers Bunny Wailer, 1947 to 2021, and Bob Marley, 1945 to 1981. They developed a ska vocal group called the Teenagers. The group soon changed their name to the Wailing Rude Boys and then to the Wailing Wailers before settling on the Wailers. 1. The band topped the Jamaican charts in 1964 with Simmer Down, which was recorded at Studio One with the rhythm section from the studio house band The Scatolites. Simmer Down was a message to the Jamaican Rude Boys to simmer down, oh cool your temper, and became an overnight hit. The record played an essential role in changing the musical agenda in Jamaica from imitating foreign artists to capturing the lives and spirit of Jamaica. 2. Wailer, Marley, and Tosh recorded with Lee Scratch Perry and his studio band The Upsetters. They also worked with renowned reggae producer Leslie Kong, who used his studio musicians called Beverly's All-Stars, Jackie Jackson, Paul Douglas, Gladstone Anderson, Winston Wright, Rad Bryan, Hux Brown, to record the songs that would be released as an album titled The Best of the Wailers. By late 1963, singers Junior Braithwaite, Beverly Kelso, and Cherry Smith had joined the group. The lineup consisted of Braithwaite on vocals, Marley on guitar, Tosh on keyboard, Wailer on percussion, with Smith and Kelso on backing vocals. Kelso remembered those early recordings fondly. After we rehearsed under this big mango tree on 2nd Street in Trenchtown, the next morning, I think it was in late 1963, we went to Studio One and recorded Simmer Down and some other songs. It was Peter, Bunny, Junior, Bob, and me. I will never forget. Sid Buckner was the engineer, and Coxone was also there along with Roland and Jackie Mitu. We recorded Simmer Down about 10 times, probably because Dodd wanted to get the best cut, she said. In 1965, Kelso left the band. Marley, Tosh, Wailer, and Braithwaite took turns on lead vocals. 5. Braithwaite left shortly after providing lead vocals for the single It Hurts to Be Alone, leaving the band consisting of the trio of Wailer, Marley, and Tosh. 5. The band's first full-length album, The Wailing Wailers, was released the same year, a compilation of tracks recorded at different times. In 1966, they created a rocksteady record label Wail and Soul M. 6. Constantine Dream Walker provided backing vocals from 1966 to 1967. Citation needed. In May 1970, the band recorded with renowned reggae producer Leslie Kong, producing The Best of the Wailers, which they released later in 1971 as their 4th album. Over the rest of 1970 and 1971, the band worked with Lee Scratch Perry, producing the band's 2nd and 3rd albums, Soul Rebels, 1970, and Soul Revolution Part 2, 1971. During this time, the Upsetters members Aston "Family Man" Barrett bass and his brother Carlton Barrett drums. 7 were recruited as instrumental backing for the Wailers. Citation needed. Signing to Island Records. In 1972, while in London, the Wailers asked their road manager Brent Clark to introduce them to Chris Blackwell, who had licensed some of their Coxone releases for his Island Records. The Wailers felt they were due royalties from these releases. Blackwell was not convinced, but he was impressed by their character. He thought they exuded power and self-possession despite being poor. Despite not having seen the band perform live, he advanced them £4,000 to record an album. He did not even require them to sign anything, feeling they deserved a break. 8. 9. Jimmy Cliff, Island's top reggae star, had recently left the label. His departure may have primed Blackwell to find a replacement. In Marley, Blackwell recognized the elements needed to snare the rock audience. I was dealing with rock music, which was really rebel music. I felt that would really be the way to break Jamaican music. But you needed someone who could be that image. When Bob walked in, he really was that image. 10. The Wailers returned to Jamaica to record at Harry J's in Kingston, which resulted in the foundational tracks, what would make up the album, Catch a Fire. Primarily recorded on an 8-track, Catch a Fire marked the first time a reggae band had access to a state-of-the-art studio and were accorded the same care as their rock and roll peers. The tracks were taken to Island Studios in London and worked on by Blackwell, with Marley supervising. Blackwell desired the tracks to appeal to rock audiences in the United Kingdom and United States, to whom the band would be novel. 11. 9. To this end, he made the tracks sound more of a drifting, hypnotic-type feel than a reggae rhythm. To 12. He restructured Marley's mixes and arrangements. The tracks were overdubbed with the help of Wayne Perkins on guitar and John "Rabbit" Bundrick on keyboard. 11. The mix deviated from the bass-heavy sound of Jamaican music, and 2 tracks were omitted. 10. The album released in April 1973, closely followed by Burnin' in October 1973. Burnin' contained the songs Get Up, Stand Up, credited to Tosh and Marley, and Marley's I Shot the Sheriff. A cover version of the latter was Eric Clapton's first U.S. #1 in 1974 to Tosh and Livingston Departure and I3's. In 1974, Livingston left the band due to various disagreements with Blackwell, including not getting paid for the English leg of their Burnin' tour and his refusal to play in the freak clubs that Island had booked the band. Tosh believed that producer Blackwell, whom he unfavorably called Chris Whitehurst, was responsible for the bad relationship between the band members. He thought Blackwell favored Marley over the rest of the band, giving him more attention and money. 10. And with the decision to release their albums under the name Bob Marley and the Wailers instead of the Wailers that Citation needed, Marley continued with a new lineup, which included the Aston Barrett bass, Carlton Barrett drums, Junior Marvin lead guitar, Al Anderson lead guitar, Tyrone Downey keyboards, Earl Wyatt Lindo keyboards, and Alvin Seco Patterson on percussion. Additionally, the I3s provided female backing vocals. The 3 I3 members were Marley's wife Rita Marley, Judy Mowat, and Marcia Griffiths. Their name is a spin on the Rastafarian I and I concept of the Godhead within each person. The album Natty Dread was released in 1974, the first without Tosh and Livingston and with the I3s. It featured No Woman, No Cry, a seminal song in the Wailers canon, along with Lively Up Yourself and the more political Them Belly Full But We Hungry. In 1975, a live version of No Woman, No Cry, recorded at the Lyceum Theatre in London during the Natty Dread tour, became Bob Marley and the Wailers' first successful single outside reggae circles, reaching number 22 on the UK singles chart. Perry released 2 compilation albums for Trojan Records in 1974, Rasta Revolution and African Herbsman, which contained songs from Soul Rebels and Soul Revolution Part 2, respectively, and he was the copyright holder of several songs from these albums. These changes caused a major dispute between Marley and Perry when the former saw the albums, 6 months after their publication, in the Halfway Road in England. Bob Marley and the Wailers' next album, 1970's Rastaman Vibration, was a breakthrough success in the U.S., reaching number 8 on the Billboard 200 chart. 17. The song War featured lyrics taken directly from the text of a Haile Selassie speech. The album credits numerous songwriters, including Bob and Rita Marley, the Barretts, and Marley's childhood mentor and friend Vincent Ford, amongst others. Marley was in dispute with publishing company Cayman Music and sought to avoid contractual entanglements by putting the songs in the names of his family and friends and provide them with potential future income. 18. Also in 1976, Bunny Wailer Livingston released his debut solo album Blackheart Man, with Marley and Tosh contributing backing vocals and the Barretts forming the rhythm section on some tracks. Peter Tosh also released his first solo album entitled Legalize It. Marley and Livingston received co-writing credits on some of the songs. Most of the then-current Wailers band, the Barretts, Anderson, Downey, played on the record, with Rita Marley providing backing vocals. Stay in London and Exodus. Following an assassination attempt at their home in Kingston in December 1976, the Marleys moved to London, England in early 1977. Most of the current Wailers lineup followed, with Marley also recruiting Jamaican-born, London-raised guitarist Junior Marvin. This lineup recorded the next Bob Marley and the Wailers album, Exodus, released in June 1977. The album title and title track were conceived in response to Jamaican Prime Minister Michael Manley's campaign slogan, "We know where we're going." 19 featuring downbeat reggae rhythms fused with elements of soul, blues, and English rock. Exodus was a top 20 hit in the US and UK, while the song Exodus was #1 in Jamaica. Exodus also featured numerous songs which would go on to be hits and iconic Bob Marley and the Wailers tunes in their own right, including Jamming, Waiting in Vain, a new version of 1965's One Love / People Get Ready, and the carefree, optimistic Three Little Birds. In 1999, Time magazine named Exodus the greatest album of the 20th century, and the album has continued to feature in best of all time lists. In March 1978, the album Kaya was released. The record was coolly received by critics, who found it lightweight and uninspired following Exodus. Nevertheless, Kaya went top 5 in the UK and contained the hit single, Is This Love? Kaya also contained new versions of 3 songs from 1971's Soul Revolution 2. Bob Marley and the Wailers toured Europe extensively in support of Kaya, resulting in the live album Babylon by Bus, also released in 1978. Returned to Jamaica in later years, Marley and the Wailers returned to Jamaica in April 1978 to play the One Love Peace concert in Kingston, aimed at calming political tensions and violence in their home country. Near the end of the concert, Marley joined hands on stage with Manley and opposition leader Edward Seaga. Bob Marley had a lifelong interest in Africa, having visited Ethiopia briefly in 1978. 26 themes of African independence and Pan-African unity dominated 1979's overtly political album Survival. Songs including Africa Unite, Zimbabwe, and Wake Up and Live made Marley's feelings plain, while the single One Drop employed a double meaning of the reggae rhythm used in the song and a system of racial classification used in the USA. In 1980, Bob Marley, absent Wailers, was invited to perform Zimbabwe at the country's Independence Day celebrations. In 1977, following persistent pain in his right big toe, Bob Marley had been diagnosed with acral lentiginous melanoma, a rare form of skin cancer. Doctors recommended amputation of the toe, but Marley refused for religious reasons. He also feared it would hinder stage performance. Bob Marley and the Wailers pressed on, planning extensive worldwide tours. The last Bob Marley and the Wailers album released in Bob's lifetime, Uprising, appeared in June 1980. An assertive affirmation of Marley's Rastafarian beliefs. The album contained the song Forever Loving Jah, the solo acoustic, folk-based redemption song, believed by some to be Marley's finest song, and the successful single, Could You Be Loved. The band embarked on a U.S. tour to promote the album. One of the last performances that included Marley was in 1980 at Madison Square Garden. His final live show was performed at the Stanley Theater in Pittsburgh. By September 1980, Marley could no longer perform live. He sought alternative cancer treatments in Europe before attempting to return home to Jamaica. Marley's condition worsened on the flight, and he died in a Miami hospital on May 11 post-Bob Marley death. 1981, a Bob Marley and the Wailers album, Confrontation, was released in May 1983, 2 years after Bob Marley's death. It contained unreleased and demo songs recorded during Marley's lifetime. Backing vocals by the I-Threes were added to several of the songs to give the album some consistency. Buffalo Soldier, a single release from the album, was a top 10 hit in the UK. The music of Marley, Tosh and Wailer enjoyed considerable success as reggae music continued to gain popularity during the 1980s. In 1984, Island Records released a Bob Marley and the Wailers greatest hits album, entitled Legend. The album contains all 10 of the Wailers' top 40 UK hits, plus Redemption Song, and 3 songs from the Marley Livingston era, Stir It Up, Get Up, Stand Up, and I Shot the Sheriff. Legend went to number 1 on the UK album charts and peaked at number 5 in the USA, but it has stayed in the Billboard 200 and UK Top 100 since release. It is officially the biggest-selling reggae album ever, with an estimated 28 million copies sold globally. As of 2024, Carlton Barrett and Tosh died, both of them murdered, in 1987. Braithwaite was murdered in 1999. The Wailers band was formed by Aston Barrett in 1989. The original Wailers was instead formed by Anderson and Marvin in 2008, the same year in which Sherry Smith died. The rest of the original members of the band died within a few years of each other. Earl Lindo died in 2017, and both Alvin Seco Patterson and Bunny Wailer Livingston died in 2021. Keyboardist Tyrone Downey died in 2022, and Aston Barrett died in February 2024. Donald Kinsey died in February 2024 on Bob Marley's birthday, February 6th, 3 days after the loss of Aston Barrett. Legacy. In 2001, Catch a Fire was reissued as a double album, with the first part being the previously unreleased Jamaican versions of the song, without Blackwell's overdubs, and the second part being the album as it was released in 1972. In March 2013, an overview of most of the music made by the Wailers